Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, this is Right Noise, a show about, and I'm your host, Vanilla Franco. Thank you for joining me. Now, today's episode is about one of the greatest rock acts in history, easily, certainly one of the most inventive bands of the last 16 years, led by a personal hero of mine, the Castle-Faced King, the Death God Golu. I'm talking about John Dwyer and his monster project, OSEES. Now, I want to start off this video by saying thank you very much for the support on the channel, as usual. In the last video, I asked for 400 subscribers and you gave me 4,000 and more views than I knew what to do with. So I really appreciate that. That's really awesome. Let's try and get to 5,000 subs for this video. That'd be really great. And let's waste no time. Let's get into it. Now, OSEES cover a lot of sound ground when they make music, a lot of bleeps and bloops and keyboards and crazy stuff, but this episode is going to be mainly guitar focused and pedal heavy. Speaking of pedals, I want to give a huge thanks and even bigger shout out to Death by Audio. I told them I wanted to make this video and they were really excited. They hooked me up with some crazy pedals. So now this won't only be the greatest OSEES tone video of all time, but the most accurate too. John Dwyer loves these pedals and I can see why, because quite frankly, nothing on the pedal market sounds quite as crazy as what this company is making. Thank you very much, Death by Audio. Shouts out to Taylor at Death by Audio for making this happen. She hooked me up with the pedals, and you should check out her band Strawberry Launch. Excellent driving music, sweet tunes. Hell, check out all the Death by Audio bands. It's all good. If you like this kind of stuff, you're gonna like all the Death by Audio bands. A Place to Bury Strangers, good band, led by the boss man of the operation there at Death by Audio, Oliver Ackerman. Check it out. Now, for the bands in the last two episodes of the show, I'd already spent years analyzing those tones and buying specific pieces of gear that would help me achieve those sounds. But for OSEES, I had to do a bit more reading up. What the fuck? Now, in classic Right Noise fashion, I want to show you the best, most optimum setup, and then address and showcase a whole manner of alternatives. So I'm shooting for a bit of a blend between the old school OSEES sort of studio tone and the more modern OSEES live sound, and then that way, I think, because it's a good middle ground, you'll be able to shoot from there to a specific song or album tone if you want to, with only a few minor adjustments on the setup that I'm about to show you. It should be A-okay. A-okay. Let's talk about this. The Burns 66 12-string electric guitar. Look at that noggin. This is the machine that made the OSEES back in the day. Drippy, crunchy, surfy sound. It's dreamy and jangly, but if you amp it up correctly, it's got some serious garage grit. Let's try it out. Real quick, most OSEES songs are in D standard tuning, so tune on down to that. I've turned up the gain and the reverb, now we're in garage territory. let's talk about this. This is a vintage 1964 Gibson Melody Maker with custom P90s installed just for this video. I purchased this one from the lovely folks in 6060 Sounds, Denmark Street, London. It's a bit of a weirdo guitar, and I want to explain a bit more about why that's the case in another video. But look, it's a Gibson classic, P90s. You don't want to hear me talking about it, you want to hear it plugged in and playing, so let's do that. Yeah, put a bit of reverb on there now. Dwyer likes to run his guitar into two different amplifiers that are EQ'd differently. I'm using what's called an ABY pedal to do that. It takes your one guitar signal, splits it into two, and when you EQ two different amps that are playing the same thing slightly differently, the gain reacts slightly differently in two different amplifiers. You can get really close with just one, but I found having two and really sort of dialing them in separately is what gets you as close as possible. I'm going to show you that now. So here's the ABY setup. As you can see, one signal in, two signals out. Typically, ABY boxes can be used to switch between circuits. So say one of those cords was going to a mixing desk and another cable going to an amplifier. You could switch between amp and mixing desk with the touch of the button, but I've got it set so that both outputs are outputting the same thing at the same time. So we can run two amplifiers this way. So for Big JD, the thinking is that one amp handles all of the bass end with no treble and mids, and another amp handles all the treble and mids with no bass. So for my setup, I'm not going to stick to that absolutely religiously. I've made a couple of changes, like my bass amplifier has got a tiny bit of mids and just a fraction of treble, and my treble and mids amplifier has got a tiny bit of bass in there. And the reason for that change is just because I'm not using the exact same equipment that John Dwyer is using, so I am going to EQ a little bit differently, and so should you, unless you have the actual equipment that John Dwyer is using, in which case you can just invite me over, give me the amps, I'll take the amps, and then I'll have the amps. No, but in all seriousness, you got to pay attention to what the amps are doing separately and how they interact with each other when they're playing the same thing at the same time to really dial it in. Real quick, you might be wondering why I'm not using this big Fender amp situation, because that is a big Fender amp situation. Well, it's an interesting story and a bit of a coincidence, and it's all to do with this Fender Dual Showman head. So I was looking into the Dual Showman, and supposedly it has similar circuitry to a vintage Fender Twin Reverb Silverface. And if you saw the first episode of Right Noise, you'll know that this Laney LG12 crunches up a lot more similarly to a Fender Twin than this amplifier does. So oddly, this ended up being more Fender than this amp made by Fender. I'm just gonna stand next to these amps as a comparison. I think this situation is a little bit smaller than John Dwyer's. Or is it? I can't tell. Now, I know the way that I've run the cables and placed the mics, it looks almost maybe too professional like this, but you can have more fun with it and be a bit more loose and relaxed. Same thing with the 12 string, not changing any of the settings. moment, because it's been bugging me since I planned on making this video. If you don't pan each amp separately, that's not stereo, is it? Because they're both in the middle, and that felt natural to me, because maybe if you had bass in one ear and treble in the other, it'd feel a bit off balance, maybe, depending on... Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I should have probably looked this up. I don't know what OSEES actually do. I don't know. I don't know the answers to these questions, but you know what I do know is that it's time to talk about guitar pedals right now. So, Death by Audio hooked me up with this, and what the hell is this, you may be thinking? Well, John Dwyer uses what's called a fuzz war overload, which Death by Audio unfortunately don't make at the moment, but effectively, it was a regular fuzz war with an onboard treble boost. So, in order to make this video as accurate as possible, Death by Audio hooked me up with this one-of-a-kind, top-secret treble booster prototype. Just the treble boost side of the fuzz war overload. So this, running into this, is the full overload sound. Let's run that through the stack. So, because you can buy one of these, but you can't buy one of these because it doesn't exist, I'm going to try out some pedal alternatives in place of the treble booster. But I'm going to say this, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm enjoying the use of the word prototype there, because it kind of suggests to me that maybe at some point, after some hard R&D, Death by Audio could release a pedal like this. But I don't know. They have not alluded to it. That is just my speculation. But just in case something like this doesn't see the light of day, we're going to try some other things out. So I'm thinking I'm going to try this EQ pedal, and maybe I'm massively oversimplifying the technology involved, but surely that will do what we need it to do. Now we're going to try hitting this maxed out wah. What's interesting about this wah is the activation button is on the side and not on the rocker itself. But in this context, that's actually helpful. We can leave it in the fully cocked position and just turn it off and on. Also, because it's a bit loose, it naturally falls in the fully cocked position anyway. Not 100% sure how this one's going to go, but we'll see. Now it's time for this guy, the supersonic fuzz gun, Death by Audio. This is where Death by Audio really shine. This pedal has clearly been made by aliens. It is a monster, a toe cutter, thumb buster, and you think you know what a fuzz pedal is, but then... I'm gonna stop talking about this and start playing with it. Let's go. What was that? What was that? Those pedals are seriously sick, a little bit terrifying, but very, very, very cool. Death by Audio, thanks again for hooking me up. Now I'd say at this point we're going to need a little bit of... This is the Boss DD3 digital delay unit. People love the DD3 over other Boss delay pedals. I think because it's got an old school feel, and for whatever reason, when it comes to making music, people love old school vibes. Let's just try it out. It's just a delay pedal, and I'm gonna give you some delayness. Delayness, that doesn't sound good. So with the DD3, you can turn off the pedal and it will kill the effect. And believe it or not all delay pedals offer you that ability. So what you can do is dial it up crazy. And if you have the ability to just cut the craziness whenever you want, you can play something like the intro to Static God from the Orc record. You can also do Stunner, the opening track on the Intercepted Message album. Here's a wah pedal. You know what a wah pedal is, but here's a wah pedal. Let's not forget this thing, the Electro-Harmonix Mel 9 tape replay machine, modeled off a Mellotron, of course. For OSEES, we got it in the orchestra setting. These kind of pedals are really interesting to me in that they discard your original signal and make a new digital recreation of what you're playing. Sounds great, tracks really well. Sounds very unusual in certain circumstances. Let's give it a listen. Right at the end of my chain, I got this Hall of Fame mini reverb on a spring setting. Only a touch, and it kind of simulates that Jules Sherman / twin reverb. Now that my Death God board is operational, I'm going to play you a bit of a mix of OSEES style stuff. John Dwyer likes to dance around on these pedals, so that's what I'm going to do in this little demonstration for you. I hope you enjoy. So depending on what you're going for, you might need to make adjustments here and there. If you want an old school OSEES sort of studio sound, grab your 12 string, turn your reverb up just a little bit more. If you want a more modern live sound, grab a 6 string and remember to dance around on those pedals, man. It can be a little bit difficult still to decipher which pedals are actually being employed for some of your favorite OSEES tracks, so I'm going to do a bit of a pedal quick fire round using some OSEES favorites as the tonal benchmark. Okay, the first tone is just the delay and reverb. The delay effect level is on quite low and the reverb is on pretty low as well. No other pedals going, just the 2 amps crunching up. So this one's got the least going on. It's just everything off but the reverb, and the reverb is turned up just a tiny bit. And then with that amount of reverb, minotaur or minotaur. Now for this one, you want to tune your E string, it's not an E, but E string, down to, not a D, but your D string. It would be drop D on a standard guitar, but now it's... Is that drop C? Whatever. Then, delay back on. And then the fuzz war. If it's feeding back like that, you're doing the right thing. Okay, so I'm trying to go for a foul form sound, but if I'm totally honest, I can't control the fuzz gun. And then lastly, your main sort of solo tone is delay, reverb, treble boost. Now before I talk guitar tone alternatives, I want to talk a little bit about bass. Tim Hellman in the band, holding it down, doing a great job. The thing I like about the low end side of OSEES is the fact that it's kept pretty straight. Like a lot of bands, high energy, high gain sound will throw a fuzz pedal on anything that moves, but not in this case. And I think that sound as a whole is a lot better off for it. Bass, a little bit of tone rolled off, a little bit of compression. The heartbeat of the band. Okay, so I've got my bass actually going into my music software, DI. Now that might offend some bass purists, but my reasoning for that is Tim Hillman gets such a buttery smooth bass tone coming out of the amp that I feel like I can only really achieve that same smoothness by going DI. If you know about DIing bass, you know what I mean about that kind of computerized smoothing effect. And I've got some compression going on the amp simulation and a little bit of gain in the amp simulation too. That gain is just to really give you that heartbeat effect. You don't want the notes you're playing to get lost in the low end of the tune. You want to really feel what you're playing when you play it. So before Tim was on board, there was a pretty legendary man covering the bass side of things by the name of Petey Dammit. And what was interesting to me about his bass tone was the fact that he was using a 6-string Jazzmaster and EQ, as opposed to, you'd probably put some octave effects, but yeah, no, that's not what he did. And what I think is cool about that and why it worked really well with the old school the OSEES records is because I feel like not having a full-on bass in your face tone, it definitely felt more retro surf rock, which I think sonically was where they were at back then. Let's try and recreate that sort of a sound with a guitar, yeah, and not a bass, yeah. Okay, now we're gonna play a bit of Floatin' Coffin. I'm gonna use my Jaguar as my bass, and I'm just going into this EQ pedal and it's set like that, mostly towards the bass end. So as usual on this show, I'm going to showcase some alternative methods to achieving the sounds that we've talked about thus far. Although I must stress at this point, the pedals I've used up to now produce some very unique sounds. If you want Death by Audio goodness, go Death by Audio. It's more worth it than you could possibly imagine. But I mean, in essence, the OSEES sound is be loud, have some echoes in there, and then some sort of flamethrower effect to really make your solos screamy. So we're going to try some other stuff out. Now, real quick, the other thing I want to point out is something that I've managed to mention in every video so far, and that is the importance of being close to breakup in the amp. Now, whenever somebody asks about how to achieve the OSEES sound, everybody says fuzz, 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 delay, which is true, but it's not really a turn it on and leave it on the whole show kind of situation for Dwyer, and I'm going to show you some examples of when there isn't any fuzz going on. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Both amps are going, delay, reverb, no fuzz. No fuzz. No fuzz. No fuzz. I don't know if you caught that, but there was no fuzz in those examples. Being on the edge of distortion is a great tone zone to be in for this kind of music. You don't always need to reach for something high drive for what would effectively be your rhythm tone. So with that in mind, our bass level OSEES tone will sound like that, but the camera's falling off the thing. So So with that in mind, our sort of bass level OSEES tone will sound like that, but what we're going to do is replace the fuzz and the delay with some alternative pedals, see what we come up with. Sorry, bud, we got to make some space for your uncle. Big Muff's cool. I like the Big Muff. I haven't found a good enough excuse to use it on anything yet, but it's an interesting thing. Not very OSEESy though. I think in this context it didn't really work so well. Let's try something else. I'm looking at it on the Death Guard board. Doesn't look like it's manly enough to handle this, but this thing's got some serious bite. Often surprises me with how powerful it is. Let's give it a go. Did a lot better than I thought it would. It doesn't have the heft that the Fuzz War has, the heft, the pure heft, but it did a good job. Okay, this is just for me. This is, So this pedal actually broke, which I think is hilarious in a video that's really about death by audio. If I was Oliver Ackerman, I'd be very happy that this brand of pedal malfunctioned in my video over any other brand of pedal. This is a good pedal. But it just goes to show you,
there is no substitution for death by audio. Death by audio. Dependable, reliable, dependable.
Just for that offense, we're going to remove the Boss delay and put a Behringer delay in there and really delay it up so we can hear exactly what it's doing. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. I'm not just saying this because I'm friends with the people at Death by Audio now, but I don't think any of those substitutions really worked that well. I mean, definitely interesting sounds going on, but nothing distinctly like OSEESy, if you know what I'm talking about. Like, you want to play a Big Muff, play Smashing Pumpkins, you know. That sounded like a diss. That wasn't a diss. I mean, the delay works, but a delay, it's just a delay. So, you know, I don't really think that counts. I'm gonna try one more thing, and I'm almost certain it's not gonna sound good, but typically when I think that, it sounds okay. So we're gonna try it, we're gonna see how it goes. So on this show, I like to cater to everybody's needs, and I really enjoy being able to say, you know, if you don't have these pedals or these microphones or any of this fancy equipment, here's what you can do to plug straight into your interface and get these tones by messing around on your music software of choice. Typically though, when I say that, it's because I know secretly beforehand it will work, and this, I have no idea. So I'm gonna recreate this setup that I've got going on in real life as faithfully as I can in the Matrix, even including the 2 amps, and I guess we're just gonna learn at the same time how that goes. So for this setup, I've got guitar going into ABY box, which I guess is cheating a little bit, but it just helps me split the signal into 2 separate thingies. And that means that I can design my treble amp and bass amp slightly differently. One amp obviously handling the bass side of things, the treble amp doing the trebs and the mids, and that's EQ'd to closely follow what was happening in this amp and this amp in real life. Okay, here's my rhythm tone all in the computer. Sounds okay so far. To try and simulate the treble boost, I put an EQ in there, boosted the treble of course. I've also given it quite a lot of level. On a real EQ pedal that would be just way too much, but the thing is, with the real treble boost, I think there's a little bit of drive going on in there. I don't know what it is, it's something I can't quite put my finger on, but everything crunches up a little bit when you hit that, so I wanted this to crunch up a little bit as well. Well, it's me from 10 seconds in the future. I just did a take and it didn't really have the snap I was looking for, so I put this vintage drive before the EQ. Barely any drive, tones rolled off just a little bit. I'm not sure that that's making a difference at this point because it's going into an EQ pedal, level all the way and no fat. I'm assuming that that's an EQ thing as well. I don't really know what's happening, but that's what I'm doing. Alright folks, I'm going to have to level with you here at this simulated fuzz stage of this bit, but I couldn't really get anything to sound good. Controversial opinion, maybe it's me though, maybe it's something I'm doing wrong, so definitely take this with a pinch of salt, but I don't think that computer software handles dirt guitar tones all that well. Maybe it's because I'm just messing around with stock stuff and I don't have anything extra hooked up in the background like Amp Hub or something like that, and maybe a more sophisticated simulation would make all the difference. But I'm going to be honest, and I would never normally say this in the section of the video that's all about what if you didn't have the gear, but I would try really hard to have at least an okay fuzz or an okay drive and have my guitar signal hitting that before it hits the DI, because if you're trying to make OSEES level of noise, you need as much excitement happening before the DI because anything after is going to fall a bit flat. So I'm going to try putting that boss fuzz before the DI, and maybe boss can redeem itself before the end of this video. Okay, listen, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but there's a lot of pressure on you right now. Believe it or not, that crazy noise I just made was actually a vast improvement on the sound that I was getting going straight into DI and using a simulated fuzz. I still think I hated that tone so very much though. Again, I hate to say this in the section of the video that's all about what if you didn't have the gear, but let this be a sign that maybe to achieve this kind of a sound, you need some gear. So listen here, dear, get off your rear, get some gear, bring it over here and have a good career. No, in all seriousness, you can do a lot by just going straight into your music software, but I think for a sound as complicated as OSEES, it's not really gonna. There must have been some people hearing me go, let's try and do this all in the DI, that were like, good luck with that, man. So, yeah, no, get some gear. Now, obviously, I'm not saying blow all your money on a Death God board and a 2-amp setup. Well, you can, but I'm not telling you to. But just for the love of God, for the love of God, don't do what I just did, please. While we're messing around in the DI, you know what sounds great? Direct, no amp simulation. Death by audio. Vanilla Franco, is this an OSEES video or just an ad for Death by Audio? It's an ad for both! John Dwyer's presence alone is an ad for getting your face melted off, and a melted face is an ad for Death by Audio. Synergy, business, police cops. Let's talk drums. I really love the drumming in this band. Paul Quattrone, Dan Rinkin, legendary drummers. Oh yeah, there's 2 of them. So the notion that every good band has a great drummer is doubly true for OSEES. So the drums in this kind of music have like a crispy crunchiness to them, and I think that's coming from compression and a bit of sweetened high end, maybe even some saturation on the overhead or snare. So I'm going to analyze the drum sound based on the pedal medley jam that I did earlier on in the video. I think the drums sounded pretty accurate on that. The drums look pretty beat up, but it's kind of helping with the muting thing that I'm going for here. I like a drum tone that's sort of half dead, I like to call it. It's not ringing out all the way, but it's not full on dead dry 70s, you know. Looks terrible, but it doesn't sound like timpanis, which I like. OSEES use stereo overheads, I think, and I should have done that, but I forgot because I'm stupid, and it would have made mixing the drums make more sense, but alas, I'll show you what I did anyway. So, because I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to doing anything, I kind of just did overhead, kick, and snare. But it would have made sense to have two overheads. Could have done one drum kit way on the outside and kept one drum kit in the middle. But I think OSEES sort of mix up how they do the drum mixing anyway, depending on the album or song. So I sort of kept everything in the middle, but I really just don't recommend that you do that. Okay, so here's drum kit number 1 on a loop. I'm going to show you what I did with the mixing. So kick. Put a compressor on there, removed some weird frequencies, and gave it a little low-end boost. With the snare, I put a compressor on there, got rid of some more weird frequencies. I don't know what's going on with the EQ on that one, but I put a saturation knob on there. And then with the overhead, compressor, removed a lot of low-end, gave it like sort of mid-high boost, and then cut some really harsh frequencies with the EQ. And then all of that is going into this bus with another EQ and an aggressive compressor. But having two entire drum sounds on one song forces you to look at when would you be playing the same thing as the other drum kit and when would you be playing something that differs from the other drum kit. So I tried to use the kick and use of the cymbals to highlight these differences. So here's the kick from drum kit number 1. There's a lot of bleed happening, sorry about that. But I'm going to unmute drum kit number 2's kick, and you'll notice that this provides the foundation, and this provides the pace. Now there's some speed going on. I've tried to keep this idea of one drum is like a foundation, and the other one provides the pace or some sweetness. So here's drum kit number 1. And then when I unmute drum kit number 2, you'll notice that there's a lot more going on. Cymbal, and then a few snare double taps, like here. It's very subtle, but that double tap snare is a very two drummers OSEES type thing. And if I just give you the overhead for drum kit number 2, you can really hear some pacey cymbals going on. Double tap snare. That's very OSEES. That's very Static God, that one. The other thing I was going to say about the two drums is when you have fills going on, if one is snare focused, it's cool to have the other one be tom focused. So here's a fill for drum kit number 1. It's snare and then tom. And that same bar, the fill for drum kit 2, is snare tom, snare tom, snare tom, snare tom, snare tom. But together, it sounds like an octopus playing the drums, in the best way. Yes. Let's talk about vocals. So for OSEES style vocals, you want a little bit of crunch, a little bit of a high-end boost, but most crucially, some delay. Death by Audio sent me some cool stuff to make this video, but I didn't want them going bankrupt on my account, so I bought this unit myself. The Echo Master, very nice, very cool, old school tape delay vibes, simple controls, I like that, feedback mix, time, XLRs, very helpful, 1/4 inch, even more helpful. This thing is cool and I like it. So this is the kind of vocal rig I believe JPD would be using for live stuff. Microphone into some kind of delay unit. I'm using the Echo Master obviously, but I think he uses an extra DD3 pedal. He used to use an old school Roland Space Echo for the vocals, but I think he got tired of having to fix that thing every show because it was very temperamental. That's going into a mixer with plenty of gain in there to give your voice some grit, and I'm imagining a little bit of a high-end boost, so that's what I've done here. All that going into a PA speaker that's used as a monitor. You want to know something cool about this band? With a setup like this, you don't need to rely on the venue sound system. If your sound guy's a piece of garbage, drop his ass. Get your own mic going, get your own PA going. Go loud, man. Sound tech.
You are the sound tech.
Anywho, for old school OSEES vocal vibes, tidal wave, carrion crawler, warm slime, you want plenty of feedback in there. Check. Woo, 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 woo. Let's try this kind of echo on an old school OSEES jam. Okay, so I'm going into this, I'm not going into the PA, but the same principles would apply. Hope you don't mind.
Rap a barrel solo. certainly a total hopes and certainties. Yes. I don't know the lyrics. Bang, 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 for things that should be free. Oh no, here is not for me. The devil, that was something.
I find the more modern live vocals like slapback, but with a few extra slaps in there. Slapback plus, if you will. So this is slapback, one slap. But over here, slapback plus. Few extra slaps. Sounds good to me.
She's standing there. It's a gentleman. A meal is coming. It's wondering by explosion. I roll my club. Red before me. It's a better than stars. What would you do? Yeah. Newspaper, it's a late paper. It's all the same to me. It doesn't matter at all. You're an institution. Your system breaks down. The fizz. I smell the fizz for miles and miles of fizz. I am no worse than the presence of the fizz. I try to find to reach this place for face first down and the front door.
Alright folks, that was the sound of OSEES as best as I could figure it. I hope you learned something. Thank you very much for sticking around and watching my video. I want to give a huge shout out and kind of apology to Tomas Dolis, who's the brilliance behind the keys of OSEES. I don't know anything about keyboards, which is incredibly lame, I know, but that's why I didn't feature any keyboardy stuff in this video. But Tomas, you're making a great noise up there, and when I get into keyboards, which I really want to be my next big thing, I'm going to be basing some of my choices off of whatever you got going on up there, because it's a great sound. And of course, I want to say a huge thanks to Death by Audio. Thank you, Taylor at Death by Audio, for hooking me up with the pedals once again. All the opinions I've expressed about Death by Audio in this video are entirely my own. I know it seems like someone's been paying me every 5 seconds to say they're the greatest pedal company of all time, but that's not the case at all. As soon as I got these pedals and started messing around with them, I realized this is a very, very special company making very, very cool machines. Mr. Ackerman, I don't know what's going on up here, but for the love of God, for the sake of music, keep doing what you're doing, and if you got any other wacky inventions, please send them my way, because I'd love to do another video. Thanks, Death by Audio. Your viewership and support is greatly appreciated. If you could follow me on Instagram, that would be really cool, but if possible, extending your support to my brand new Patreon would be really helpful too. I'm a one-man operation, and it does take me a while to write, shoot, and edit these videos, so any outsider support would not only mean that I get to make more of this kind of content, but also I could generate some really cool exclusive stuff, and I think you guys would like what I got up my sleeve. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Much love. Remember to go loud, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers.